In this video, we'll be taking a look at 4 NBA games happening on January 30th, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 8 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 4 NBA games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Los Angeles Clippers versus Denver Nuggets. This one is set up in a pretty fun way because you have a clear narrative on both sides before you even get into numbers or charts. You get the Clippers coming into Denver on January 30, 2026, walking into Ball Arena at altitude with that classic road energy, looking like a very different group than the one that stumbled out of the gate earlier in the season. Their overall record may still say something like the low 20s in wins against the mid-20s in losses, and their place around 10th in the conference looks ordinary on the surface, but the version of this team that is playing right now does not feel ordinary at all. Across the floor, you have Denver sitting in that low 30s in wins to mid-teens in losses range, up in the top tier of the conference, and they still carry that home aura that makes bettors instinctively lean their way whenever they step on their own court. The twist, of course, is that this is not the fully loaded version of Denver that people picture in their heads. You are talking about a group missing some serious firepower and structural pieces, with Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon, Cameron Johnson, Christian Braun, and Tamar Bates all sitting on the injury list. That is a lot of playmaking, size, and defensive versatility pulled right off the board, and it forces the remaining rotation to shoulder more creation and more responsibility, both mentally and physically. Kawhi Leonard sitting in that questionable bucket for the Clippers, plus Bogdan Bogdanovic and Derek Jones Jr. ruled out and Ty T. Washington Jr. tagged as a maybe, does balance the scales a bit on the injury side, but the Clippers still keep the core of their offensive identity intact. They have enough on the floor to run their usual actions, to create advantages off the dribble, and to keep pressure on mismatches, even if the depth on the wings is not as thick as it could be. From a style standpoint, Denver still feels like an elite offense that has to live with a much more ordinary defense, which becomes even more true when so many of their better defenders and connective pieces are in street clothes. Their attack is efficient, humming around that 120-plus points per 100 possessions band, but the cost of that has been a defense that sits in the high 110 range, where good teams with confident creators can punch real holes. They can absolutely outscore people, and they often do, but they also have a bad habit of letting teams hang around when you would expect a real heavyweight to slam the door. The recent grind against Brooklyn, where they still needed a full effort just to create separation, is a good example of how that margin for error shrinks once you strip away some of the usual stars. Now layer the Clippers' arc on top of that. They started the year looking like a mess, with something like a 6-21 type opening stretch that made every box score feel painful, then quietly flipped the script by winning roughly 15 of their next 19. Over their last 10 outings, they have piled up 9 wins and covered in 8 of those, which tells you this is not just random luck but a team that the market has been slow to fully adjust to. The offense is sitting in that mid-116 points per 100 possessions neighborhood, which puts them in the same conversation as some of the better scoring units in the league, and their defense has settled into that acceptable but not terrifying middle. So you have a hot, confident road team whose recent form looks more like a solid playoff squad than a fringe play and hopeful, stepping into a building where the favorite is talented but clearly patched together. There is also the human side of the schedule. Denver is coming off a high-effort home game the night before, leaning hard on the remaining creators in a condensed rotation, and they now have to rev the engine again with the same short bench. That kind of thing does not always show up in a spreadsheet, but you can feel it in the way legs get a little heavier on closeouts and how offensive possessions sometimes get simplified. The Clippers, on the other hand, have not exactly been grinding through nail-biters every night, thanks to a stretch with several comfortable wins that allowed their main guys to avoid overly inflated minutes. When you combine that with the altitude, which tends to punish fatigue more than it magically boosts performance, you end up with a scenario where the underdog has a very real chance to keep punching late. So while Denver probably still carries public respect as the better team on paper, the specific context here points toward a much tighter, 1 or 2 possession style game rather than a comfortable home runaway. As our first pick for this matchup, the Los Angeles Clippers to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. You basically have 2 offenses that grade out near the top of the league, facing defenses that are more solid than scary, and that is before you factor in tired legs and short rotations. Denver has been living near the top of the offensive charts all season, with that 120-plus points per 100 possessions type efficiency that makes every trip down the floor feel dangerous. Even when key names sit, they keep the same philosophy: move the ball, space the floor, and hunt good looks early in the clock. The defense on their side tends to give a fair bit of that back, and with so many regular rotation defenders out, it becomes even easier for opponents to find pockets of space, especially on the perimeter. The Clippers are not some grinding, slow-motion outfit at the moment either. Their attack has turned into a very efficient machine, scoring in that mid-116 points per 100 possessions neighborhood, with multiple creators who can initiate and plenty of shooting that forces defenses to stay honest. They run comfortable half-court sets, but they are also happy to push whenever they sense a scrambling back line or a tired closeout, and games involving them lately have settled reliably in the low to mid-200s in combined points. If you have been watching their recent stretch, you have probably noticed that the final totals have tended to land well above what bookmakers were expecting before tip. Denver games have followed a similar pattern. More often than not, those contests have ended up clearing the numbers hung before the game, which lines up with a profile of great offense paired with a defense that is simply trying to hold the fort. When you match that up with a Clippers team that can punish every late rotation and every missed box out, you are looking at a setup where both sides have real paths to efficient scoring. The pace might not look wild possession by possession, but when every trip carries a decent chance of turning into 3 points instead of 2, totals can climb fast without the game ever feeling like a track meet. Ball Arena itself quietly feeds into that story. The altitude can sap defensive effort as the game wears on, and shooters often talk about how comfortable the backdrop is in that building, especially when they get into rhythm. You also get those stretches where aggressive drives draw fouls, the game slows down for free throws, and the clock stops while the scoreboard keeps ticking. If this matchup stays reasonably competitive, the coaches will probably lean on their main scorers deep into the fourth quarter, which only increases the chances that shot-making carries all the way to the final horn. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Cleveland Cavaliers versus Phoenix Suns. The Cleveland Cavaliers host the Phoenix Suns on Friday for an NBA matchup at Mortgage Matchup Center. Cleveland is coming off wins over the Magic and the Lakers, with a date against the Trail Blazers on deck, and that little stretch already tells you their rhythm is pretty solid right now. They have taken 12 of their last 16 games, which is not some random hot week. It is a real run of form that usually builds belief in a locker room. Phoenix, on the other hand, just handled the Nets and the Pistons, with the Clippers waiting for them next, so they are not exactly limping into this thing either. They have won 5 of their last 7, which gives them their own sense of momentum, even if the narrative around them has been a bit more up and down. Cleveland is still short-handed, with Darius Garland, Max Strus, and Evan Mobley all ruled out, so they are doing this with key pieces missing, which quietly makes their recent stretch even more impressive. Phoenix has its own absences to deal with, as Devin Booker and Jalen Green are ruled out, and that changes the feel of their offense, even if the team has learned to adapt in spots. The Cavaliers just smashed the Lakers in what felt like a statement win on Wednesday, the kind of game that can echo a bit in a team's confidence and in how assertively they come out next time. Meanwhile, the Suns are feeling good after a big win over the Pistons last night, and when a team wins like that, players usually carry some swagger into the next game, even with tired legs creeping in. Honestly, it is not easy to separate these two on recent performance alone, because both are playing well and both have found different ways to handle missing stars. Here is the thing, Phoenix is walking into the second game of a back-to-back, and that spot often tilts toward the fresher side when the talent gap is not huge. So with Cleveland at home, playing confidently, and facing a Suns team that might feel the schedule in the second half, the side that looks more likely to cover the number is the Cavaliers. As our first pick for this matchup, the Cleveland Cavaliers to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Cavaliers are averaging 119.2 points on 47% shooting, while allowing 116.9 points on 46.4% shooting, which hints at games that can open up but still stay somewhat contested possession by possession. They are knocking down 35.5% of their threes and hitting 78.2% at the free throw line, with 44.8 rebounds per game, so their offense has enough balance and second chance potential, even if their defense gives up a fair share from deep at 37.8%. The Suns are putting up 114.2 points on 45.9% shooting and giving up 111.8 points on 46.7% shooting, so their games also tend to land in that range where scoring is steady but not necessarily wild. They are hitting 36.2% from beyond the arc and 80.1% from the line, while grabbing 43.4 rebounds per game, and they are holding opponents to 34.8% from three, which keeps some of those big scoring spikes in check. With both sides missing important offensive pieces, there is a decent chance that the scoring looks a little more workmanlike than explosive, especially if tired legs show up for Phoenix after playing last night. If Cleveland leans on its rebounding and if Phoenix's defense on the perimeter continues to hold, you could see more grinding possessions, longer half-court sets, and fewer clean looks turning into instant points. So when you put those scoring profiles and the injury context together, the game projects more naturally toward a lower total than a shootout, which leans this matchup toward the under. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Brooklyn Nets versus Utah Jazz. The Brooklyn Nets visit the Utah Jazz on Friday in NBA action at the Delta Center. Brooklyn comes into this one-off losses to the Suns and Nuggets, with the Pistons waiting next on the schedule, and the Nets have dropped 15 of their last 17 games. Utah is not exactly riding high either after losses to the Clippers and Warriors, with the Raptors on deck, and the Jazz have fallen in 13 of their last 16. The Nets are still without Zaire Williams, Cam Thomas, Noah Clowney, and Haywood Highsmith, while the Jazz have ruled out George Niang and Lauri Markkanen, and Kevin Love, Cody Williams, and Jusuf Nurkic are all listed as questionable. Utah steps into this matchup as a modest home favorite against a Brooklyn group that is clearly retooling and leaning into a younger core. Brooklyn's youth brings energy and the occasional burst of upside, but the same youth also shows up as wild swings from game to game, which is exactly what makes them tricky to trust on the road. The Jazz, for all their flaws, still have enough offensive punch to lean on at home and can grind out a result against a team that struggles to string together 4 clean quarters. There is not much worse than playing a choppy, inconsistent style in a tough road setting like Salt Lake City, especially when the crowd gets involved and every mistake feels a little louder. If Brooklyn's defense, which has flashed real quality at times, shows up fully locked in, then the Nets absolutely have a path to hang around. However, 5 of their last 7 opponents have put up 120 or more on them, and that kind of trend hints at cracks that a competent offense can exploit repeatedly. Once a team starts giving up that kind of production on a regular basis, it usually means it is struggling with communication, transition matchups, or both, and those issues rarely disappear overnight. The bigger issue for Brooklyn is that their own scoring punch does not quite match the pressure their defense has been placing on them, so when things tilt, they tend to tilt fast. Utah's identity leans heavily on offense while the defense lags behind, but Brooklyn's scoring woes often prevent them from taking full advantage of a leaky defense when it appears. One last angle to think about is the pricing itself, because if this were truly a toss-up where the Nets were ready to dictate terms, the number would likely sit closer to even than giving them a full possession cushion. I get that Utah has injury concerns, and that can spook people, but they are still at home with a clear rest edge. 10 of their 15 wins this season have come in this building, which says a lot about how much more comfortable and confident they are in front of their own fans. Brooklyn, on the other hand, looks more and more like a team leaning into a long view and showing signs of something close to tank mode, which rarely pairs well with the end of a back-to-back spot. The Jazz already handled the Nets by 13 on the road last month, so even though both teams have been in rough form, this current number still feels a bit light when you line it up with how Brooklyn is playing. Honestly, this shapes up as a simple vote of confidence that Utah can take care of business on its own court and cover. As our first pick for this matchup, the Utah Jazz to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Brooklyn Nets are averaging 107.9 points on 44.2% shooting and allowing 115.1 points on 49% shooting. From three-point range, the Nets are hitting 34.3% and converting 78.8% at the free throw line, while allowing opponents to shoot 38.3% from deep and pulling down 40 rebounds per game. The Utah Jazz are averaging 119 points on 46.8% shooting and giving up 127.8 points on 49.3% shooting. Utah is knocking down 35% from beyond the arc and 80.3% at the stripe, while allowing 37.8% from long distance and grabbing 44 rebounds per night. When you line those numbers up, you get a picture of two defenses that are leaking quite a bit, especially Utah's, alongside an offense in Utah that can put points on the board and a Brooklyn attack that struggles but still benefits from facing a soft resistance. Games like this often turn into track meets, not because both sides are perfectly efficient, but because the defenses allow enough clean looks and second chances that the scoreboard keeps churning. Utah's style leans heavily toward offense first, and that tends to pull opponents into a faster rhythm, which can inflate possessions even if both teams go through cold stretches. Brooklyn's defensive slide, with recent opponents frequently crossing the 120 mark, points toward more breakdowns in rotations and closeouts, which is exactly how shooters get comfortable and big men feast on putbacks. Even if the Nets' offense is not explosive on paper, facing a defense as shaky as Utah's often helps role players look better and encourages more aggressive shot taking from guys who might be hesitant in tighter games. It is also worth noting that questionable players on Utah's side do not automatically signal fewer points, because changes in rotation can lead to more pace, looser structure, and different mismatches, all of which can quietly help the total climb. So, while neither team is playing polished basketball right now, their combination of poor defense, streaky but capable shooting, and the potential for a faster tempo points more toward a matchup where the scoreboard gets a real workout. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Detroit Pistons versus Golden State Warriors. The Detroit Pistons visit the Golden State Warriors on Friday in NBA action at the Chase Center. Detroit is coming off a strong win over the Nuggets, then a setback against the Suns, and they have the Nets waiting next on the schedule. The Pistons have quietly stacked wins, taking 18 of their last 26 games and building some real momentum. Golden State just dropped a game to the Timberwolves, bounced back with a win over the Jazz, and the 76ers are on deck for them. The Warriors have still managed to claim 14 of their last 21, so it is not like they are spiraling, even if things have been a little choppy at times. Detroit has ruled out Karis LeVert because of an illness, while Golden State will be without Seth Curry, Jimmy Butler III, and Jonathan Kuminga. The Pistons were rolling nicely before they ran into a tough spot against the Suns last night, and that kind of loss can feel like hitting a speed bump more than a wall. The Warriors, for their part, have done well to stay above water with pieces missing, which says something about their baseline competence at home. Golden State has handled weaker opponents pretty well this season and has piled up 17 home wins, which always makes them tempting when they are in their own building. They have also taken 8 of the last 10 meetings with the Pistons, so history tilts toward the Warriors and makes it easy to see why the market leans their way. You can absolutely make the case that they deserve to be the ones laying points here. Here is the thing though, Detroit has been the better team overall this season and walks into this matchup with the cleaner bill of health. They have shown they can travel, with 15 road wins already in their pocket, and that usually speaks to focus and maturity when the environment is not friendly. I know the Warriors' home floor is always a factor, and the Pistons are coming in on no rest, which is usually a red flag. Even with that, Detroit has looked like the more trustworthy group night to night, and being almost fully healthy matters a ton when rotations tighten. Sometimes a line feels off, and this one has that strange smell, but long-term this kind of spot is exactly where value tends to hide if you are willing to hold your nose a bit. So, even with the temptation to lean on the Warriors at home, the better recent profile still nudges things toward the Pistons taking care of business against the number. As our first pick for this matchup, the Detroit Pistons to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The Detroit Pistons are averaging 117.4 points on 48% shooting and allowing 110.1 points on 44.2% shooting. They are knocking down 35.3% of their threes and hitting 74.7% from the free throw line, while allowing opponents to shoot 34.8% from deep and grabbing 46 rebounds per game. The Golden State Warriors are averaging 116.7 points on 46.2% shooting and giving up 113.5 points on 47% shooting. They are shooting 36.5% from beyond the arc and 81.7% at the line, while allowing 35.2% from three-point range and pulling in 42.9 rebounds per contest. When you compare those numbers, you get two offenses that are very capable of putting the ball in the basket with efficiency that is more good than great. Detroit scores a bit more and does it on stronger overall shooting, while Golden State leans on outside shooting and free throws to keep their totals healthy. On the other side, neither defense is completely locking things down, with both groups allowing respectable shooting percentages that keep games open for scoring runs. Honestly, this kind of matchup has all the ingredients for a game where the scoreboard stays busy. You have one team that rebounds very well and can create second chance looks, paired with another that loves to shoot from deep and can heat up in a hurry. Even if there are stretches where both offenses stall, the overall pace and the shot profiles hint at plenty of possessions and a lot of clean looks. The small gaps in defensive numbers, combined with strong offensive production on both sides, suggest more chances for runs, mini comebacks, and trading punches on the offensive end rather than a grinded-out rock fight. So the expectation leans toward a game where both teams find ways to score consistently enough that the final tally has a good chance to land on the higher side of things. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.